Hello, today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on VEX Code Pro V5 in C++. Coding your robot in C++ for the first time can be a little bit scary. It was kind of for me. So let's just get into it. It can look pretty daunting the first time you see it, but you'll get the hang of it. So if you just opened up VEX Code Pro and don't know what to do, go to File and then click New, and then you make a new project. Name this whatever you want. So in this case, I'm going to be naming this Autonomous, just for an example. Click Create, and you'll see this. Let me explain this. So these are comments, and this in here, VEX is going to automatically add in a comment whatever devices you have configured. So if you go over here to this motor icon in the corner and you click that, you can click add a device, and you could say you want a controller, right? And here you can click done, and it'll add a controller here, and it'll tell you the name and the type, and if it has a port, it'll tell you that. And this will tell you the author, so you can just put your name here. This tells you the name of your file, which is main.cpp, when it was created. In the description, you can click over here to add a description. I don't know if that transfers over here though. This includes the vex.h file. You can click out of the motors icon. So this includes the vex.h, which if you ever programmed in C++, you'll know what that means. So this basically just says it's going to include all of the stuff that you need to work with VEX. And this is going to use the namespace VEX, which is just going to allow you to access whatever VEX wants you to access without having to put VEX. So do not remove this. This initializes VEX code. So you'll see this int main. In between these brackets, whatever you put here is executed. So let's say we want a drivetrain, right? You can click add device, drivetrain for motor, and then you can click 1, 2, 3, and 4, or whatever ports your motors are on. And if you want to add a gyro or a GPS sensor or a 3-wire gyro or any of these, you can click those, but for now we're just going to click done. And if you go here and you click this, and you can click Enable Expert Autocomplete. This will help you a lot in VEX Code Pro because it actually, when you start using stuff, it'll tell you what you can use. So you can click Enable Expert Autocomplete, and then you can click out of this. You can also change the name up here and the description. And say we want to access our drivetrain. Well, it says the name of the drivetrain is right here, right? And it's a type of drivetrain, right? So we can do drivetrain, which this is referencing the drivetrain that's here, which is in our devices. And this is how you're going to access the methods or functions that are available in the drivetrain. You're going to click dot, or you're going to put dot. And since we've enabled our expert autocomplete, you can scroll down here and you can see all the different things that you can do with the drivetrain. So you can say like drive, and then you can put like direction, right? So you can put forward, and that'll drive forward. Or you could put drivetrain dot drive for, and then you can see here direction, distance, or you can put a lot of different stuff here. So let's get on to variables, because that's a very important thing. If you're just starting with C++, then you're going to need to know this, but if you already know C++ a little bit, you don't need to know this. So variables are like containers, kind of, where you can make a variable, and that variable will be equal to what you set it. So let's say we create an integer, which is just a whole number, and we say integer x equals 1. And I forgot to mention, every line in C++ is terminated with a semicolon. So int x equals 1. Now x will be equal to 1, so we can reference that later on. And you can do this with floats too. Floats are floating point numbers, meaning that they can be decimals. And you can even put f behind this just to tell it that's a float. You can do a boolean, so you can do bool x equals true, or you can say equals false, or you can do a char and then this star symbol, and then you can do like x equals, and then you can do this, which this basically kind of creates a string, and you can do like hello world, and yeah. Now let's get on to more like the very important stuff. So that's just the basics of C++. I recommend that you actually learn C++ or a little bit of it before you actually start coding robots in it. But you don't need to know a whole heck of a lot of C++ to code a robot. So you can click build over here, and that'll build your program. And actually, if you have your brain plugged in, it'll download the program. Or replace this build button with a download button. Let's get on to like ifs. So if a boolean is true or false, so you can do like, let's create a new boolean and let's name it x. And if x equals true, right? If x, and this means if x is true, or you can write it as if x equals true, and this will have the same effect if writing if x, and if not x, which you can put an exclamation mark. So if x is not equal true, it does not equal true, then you can, and that would be if it equals false. Then you can do whatever's in here. You can do else. So if it's equal to true, that'd be like else. And you can do an else if, and then a condition. You can in Vex, you can do while a condition is true, it'll run this. You can do a wait until condition, where wait until x is true, and then you can do a semicolon, and then you can do a do, right? And then you can do a while. So while, do this while x is true. So you can just put a semicolon here. So you do this while x, and that's a wait until. And then you can do, yeah. So I realized that I forgot to include what a for loop was. So for loops are a little bit more complicated to understand, but they are pretty much very simple. A for loop is a loop that runs while an integer is less than a certain value, and it increments, basically adding 1 to that integer every time the loop runs, and then eventually that first value will be more than the value of how many loops you want to run, therefore stopping the loop. So let's code that. For, and then for int I, so this is creating a new integer, I. So for int I, right, and this is a statement inside the for loop. While I is less than, let's say 5, and then I plus plus. I plus plus is equivalent to saying I equals I plus 1. That's the equivalent of I plus plus. And you can even do I minus minus if this value is bigger than the amount of loop. But basically this creates a new integer, sets it to 0, and it says while I is less than 5, you increment I by 1, and then eventually I will be equal to 5, taking you out of the loop. and after the loop, it'll do whatever's the rest in the main function or method. So that's basically what a for loop is. So that's basically the basics of how to code in Vex. Now let's get on to actually activating driver control in Autonomous. So if you didn't, I'm pretty sure there's templates and tutorials in Vex, like examples. But if you didn't click any of those like me, you can create a new competition object, competition. I did not spell that right. Competition. Right, I think I might have spelled that wrong. Alright, anyway, it doesn't exactly matter how you spell it. It just matters that it's not too bad. Anyway, so competition. Now this is getting the this is a variable that is of type competition, and you can do competition, your variable, dot, and then you have all of these. So this is like is competition switch. So if you've ever been in an actual competition, you'll see that there are competition switches. This function returns, and returning is basically just giving you back information about whatever. So is competition switch. This tells you if the competition switch is connected to the brain. This also says like is field control, is enabled, is driver control, is autonomous, right? So, but you really want to worry about autonomous and driver control. Now, if you click autonomous, it'll have this like weird template thing. You can just delete that for now. And you can see that we're getting an error because we're not actually giving the competition autonomous a function to run when it's time for autonomous. So we can create a void autonomous and then put void in here. And then we can just put our autonomous without the parentheses at the end. And this will tell it to run this, whatever is inside of these curly braces, whenever it's time for autonomous. And you can do the same thing with driver control. And then you can do void well, you can do driver control. And you can do void, and then put that there. Then you can do driver control without the parentheses. And boom. Now whenever you run this, it's going to run whatever in here and in here whenever it's time for autonomous or driver control. That was the basics of Vex Code Pro. So if you guys want more Vex content, like how to do tasks or very complex things, or you guys want me to go over my team's code, which you can find at our GitHub, Gear Grinders Robotics GitHub, then put that in the comments because I would love to keep doing guides. Anyways, bye.